As you may know already, Mayor Tame is now on maternity leave, having had a beautiful baby girl on the 13th of February. We wish her all and her family all the best and hope she enjoys her time settling into a new large family. To let you know that we're recording and streaming the meeting. Just a quick note about respect. Bude-Stratton Town Council has signed the NALC Civility and Respect Pledge, believing that these things should be at the heart of public life. The key message is that intimidation, abuse, bullying and harassment of councillors, clerks and council staff, in person or online, is unacceptable, whether by councillors, clerks, council staff or public members. Any person adjudged by the chair of the meeting to have breached this rule may be asked to apologise, withdraw their statement and or leave the meeting. We'll come to public participation shortly, but if you've got an issue you'd like to discuss, we will be at the castle on Saturday at 11 o'clock for Meet the Councillor. As usual, we've got a very full agenda tonight, so I'd like to ask you to be succinct and focused on the agenda as far as possible. A bit like just a minute, be mindful of repetition and deviation, but hesitation is fine. Okay, so please direct comments via the chair, which is me, by holding up your hand, and I'm going to suggest to councillors that you hold up a pen or a pencil if you'd like to go to a proposal. Just a suggestion. Okay. So, item number 1, to receive and accept apologies for absence.
Amanda Tame, Peter Bright and Simon Brown.
Thank you. Number 2, to receive declarations of registered and non-registered disposable pecuniary interests and non-registerable interests.
No pecuniary interest, but item 17, letter of support to the staff club. I am a member, I'm a coach, so I'll stay in the room but I won't vote. I think is reasonable.
Martin?
I should probably do that too.
Okay, Peter? Is that, you think that's advisable?
Yeah.
Okay. So dispensations, we've not had any requests for dispensations. Item number 4, we're very lucky tonight to have be able to receive a presentation from North Kernow Community Housing. So I'll hand you over to Ian. Thank you for coming.
Okay, shall I stand here? Is that all right?
Wherever you feel comfortable.
Okay, thank you. There is a sort of slideshow. I promise this won't be death by PowerPoint. So, North Kernow Community Land Trust. I'm the chair. My name's Ian Mason. And this organisation, which was formed on the 7th of November last year, was registered with the Financial Conduct Authority as a charitable community benefit society, was born out of a sense of urgent desire, need to do something about the housing crisis. And I know from my own brief-ish time on the council that a few years ago we were thinking about the possibility of a community land trust. And anyway, cut a long story short, last summer this reached fever pitch for me. So I got together with a few friends and we joined forces to set up this body. So, Chris Whitty style, next slide please. So what I'd like to do is just say a few brief words about who we are, what we aim to do, how we intend to go about it, and end up with a request to you as councillors for some help. So, who are we? As I said before, we are a charitable thing. There's various key themes here throughout this presentation. So, good evening, Sean.
Sorry.
That's all right. So, the key one is that we want to provide long-term, i.e. stable, affordable rented housing for people with a local connection and for key workers serving the communities in our area of benefit. We aim for our housing to be available in perpetuity. So it's not privately owned, as I say, it's a charity run by a volunteer board. And fundamentally, we want it to be a community-led operation. And I'll say perhaps a little bit more about that shortly. So we've got a steering group of 7 people. 3 board members are here this evening. So we have Helen here, Helen James, Reverend Mark James is a good lady. Sean, Councillor Sean Tilby, whom I'm sure you know pretty well, and myself on the board, and my good wife, my own good lady, is also on the steering group. And there are others as well, as you see there, listed. So, probably next slide, please. So, what are we aiming to do? Where are we intending to do it? Well, our area of benefit, according to our rules, is the northernmost parishes of North Cornwall. So, Morwenstow in the north, down to Poundstock in the south. Our rules do also refer to neighbouring parishes. From the conversations I've had with these parishes so far, I think we'll have plenty to do here to keep us busy for a while yet before we think about going beyond. And next slide, please. Who will we be helping? Fundamentally, the focus that we have is on our communities. The housing crisis, apologies if I'm sort of speaking to the converted, or teaching grandmother to suck eggs, as they say, threatens to fragment local communities, people who've established a local connection because they can't get on the housing ladder for whatever reason. And so they're forced to migrate greater or lesser distances from the communities with which they are associated. So one of the fundamental drivers was this urge to help sustain local communities. So we will be prioritising people with a real local connection, as well as the key workers who are serving these communities. Next slide, please. How will we operate? And this brings me back to this idea of being a community-led organisation, because what we're aiming to do is to establish in each parish within our area of benefit a community housing action team, CHATS for short. Now, there's been some very valuable work done through the Housing Needs Survey here in Bude. Poundstock, I discovered last week, had one as well a year or two ago. And as the reports show, they are a snapshot of need at the time. And very revealingly, they establish that there are probably almost as many hidden households who are not on Cornwall Council's waiting list as there are households that are registered on that list. So, according to the figures that we got last December, within the Bude-Stratton area, there were 317 households on the waiting list. But you know that there's 250 odd hidden households on top of that. So the need is immense. We'd like to be able to wave a wonderful magic wand and sort it all out. But realistically, it's going to take time. And what I'll say now, although it's mentioned later on, is that we would like to get to a position over time when we are not just keeping up with the needs as they arise, but getting ahead of them. In other words, through our local action teams, identifying what the need really is, both in the short term and the medium term and the long term, we can plan our activities accordingly. So we are anticipating things, not just trying to be reactive, as we will inevitably be in the initial stages. So, So that's our key vehicle as we see it at the moment. Next slide, please. So what we have put in for some community levelling up programme funding, put in for it. The programme has been oversubscribed fivefold, I gather. So whether we'll get our 70k that we've asked for remains complete mystery. But we aim to employ 2 part-time staff, an administrator and an interim manager for the first 6 months, followed by a permanent manager after that, who will then take the arrangements forward. And we will be liaising with all the parishes in some form or other. Our initial engagement is with parish councils, town council, to try and work out what that will look like, but we aim to have some sort of launch of local chats in each parish in the next 6 months. And okay, let's jump ahead, because really that's my request of yourselves, really, is that we can have a dialogue with you, representatives of you, to work out what community engagement might look like, what's appropriate here in the Bude-Stratton area, how we can engage people who are in touch with the local needs and can help us plan the provision that needs to be made. So the first 6 months we'll be setting up the chats, and then the next 6 months will be very much focused on fundraising, because we hope to have a pretty fair idea of what the needs will be in each parish over the first 6 to 12 months. Yeah, and then we'll be looking for the money to meet the need. Now, I have to say that we have already started to do some fundraising. We have already received £240,000 to get us going of capital. And that will enable us to do something. One of the first things we'll be doing is taking on management, not ownership, but management on behalf of another charity of a cottage in Poffel. So we are paying them a lease premium at the outset of 3 years' rent, and we will then be subletting on long-term tenancy. So this is a sort of trial period for them and us, but if it works well, then we'll be able to carry on managing that property for them and benefiting the people we want to benefit. So yeah, first year plan, the chats and the fundraising, and that's what we've applied for the grant funding to be able to do. Next slide please. Beyond year 1, well, there's a couple of things here. So yeah, it's good to have aims. So by the end of the 2nd year of full operation, we'd like to have taken on management of at least 12 properties and be progressing plans to develop at least an equal number of good quality, energy efficient, net zero new build properties. And one of the things that we want to do in our engagement with local councils is to identify where in their area it might be appropriate to be looking to build these good quality, energy efficient homes, affordable rented properties for the local people. And anyway, as I say, big ambitions going forward. By 2050, you know, we've got this figure of 1,000 properties under management. Wanted to say that sort of thing because although it's a long way ahead, and I won't be around then, it just reflects our determination to do something very significant. You know, we don't see ourselves, we don't want to be something that just is a flash in the pan. We want to do something that becomes an established part of the local scene for the benefit of local Next slide, please. So, yeah, this just touches on resources required. How well we aim to do quite a bit of fundraising this year. Housing, pretty expensive, goes without saying. So, probably we're going to be looking at availability of government funds, as well as acquiring properties with the help of bank loans, mortgages, things like that. All right, yeah, and I've already touched on the 240,000 that we've already got, but we're hoping that there will be people, and perhaps it's good that this is being broadcast and streamed, but we will be looking for people of community goodwill who say, yeah, well, I've got a big garden and I don't mind handing over the end of the garden to a community land trust so that somebody with local need can be housed, for example. Or somebody said, well, I've got an acre of land that I'm happy to release at reasonable cost for this sort of project. So we're going to have to be bold in our requests. So if you're out there listening, let us know. So if you think you might be able to help anyone out there, then the contact details are on the last slide. Any questions? Yeah, perhaps I ought to say more specifically, what I am asking for is perhaps if you could have a conversation amongst yourselves, and I've already had discussions with Councillor Coulson and Councillor Broy as well about this project, this new charity, and we're trying to do some stuff here in Bude already. So, yeah.
Thank you. Any
Yeah.
questions?
Are you going to be building houses?
Not personally.
No, no, it's not.
Yes, yeah.
Could you,
Yeah.
excuse
Because if
me?
you don't build cheap houses,
Sorry,
then
you
lots
have
of
to
people
go through
won't
the
be able to.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Could you go through me, please?
Can you ask that man my question?
I'll come to you in just a moment.
Exactly, and this is why it's difficult to give a generalised thing, because the situation here in Bude-Stratton is obviously very different from what it will be in Morwenstow or Poundstock, for example, more rural communities. But yes, if this need is to be met, there is no escaping the fact that some new build will be necessary, and we will be looking for appropriate places in which to build them.
Kevin?
Yeah, just on affordability. Now, my understanding is that affordability is actually used as quite a technical term. That means 75% of market rate for rent or market value for themselves. Now, that is manifestly unaffordable, certainly in terms of buying property, and I would suggest in terms of renting property for quite a lot of people. Now, is the Land Trust using that technical use of affordability, or is it going to be an assessment of local ability to actually afford houses?
Okay, so we are using the technical thing as of this moment in time. As I say, we've only been established for 3 months. So in terms of the financial modelling, there is still work to be done, and that will be done on a sort of case-by-case basis. But we would like to be able to get lower than that, but at the moment, we doing our best in terms of our current projections. We think it's wiser to work on that official situation at the moment. Yes, I mean, you're right. I mean, we
just personally, I would like the phrase 75% of the market rate used in terms instead of affordable, because I think then people understand what you're talking about. Because if you're talking affordable, people look at what they pay and they go, I can't pay 75% of the market rate. So just as a personal point, I think that needs to be something that's flagged up before gentlemen like Mr Jennings get agitated.
Okay, thank you.
Jamie?
Hiya. I was just wondering if you approached any of the new housing developments that are popping up all around you.
We haven't as yet. That is part of the plan. Obviously, if we can acquire new built properties from them directly, that will help. As I say, we've only been started for 3 months, so there's quite a lot of work to be done, but that's certainly on the agenda. Yes.
Brilliant.
Sorry to interrupt, Ian. I think there's some sort of conversations that we're having to have with you guys.
Yeah.
That you've come up with an idea that may be beneficial to the trust. So, just have a dialogue.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for coming.
Thank
really
you for
interesting,
listening.
very
Yeah.
positive. Great start. We know how pressing the housing need is, so
Yes.
look
Well,
forward to hopefully working with you.
thank you.
You're welcome to stay, but you're also very welcome to
Go.
go.
Well, I've not had my tea yet. So I think we probably will.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right.
Could I just add that having met with Ian, he is very passionate about this, and I can see that this has potential. So keep going. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's two.
I used to work in fields. Yeah, well. Yeah.
Okay. So, item number 5, minutes of the full council to receive, confirm and sign the minutes of the full council meeting held on the 2nd of February 2023.
Receive, confirm, and sign.
Okay, I'll second that. All in favour?
I'm waving a pen around.
Against? And abstain. Thank you. Okay, minutes of committees. To receive and note the minutes of committee meetings listed below. One planning committee on the 8th of February 2023. Propose we accept them.
I'll second that.
All in favour? Against? Abstain. And also the planning committee meeting on the 22nd of February 2023. Propose we accept.
Second.
All those in favour? Against? I'll abstain because I wasn't there. Yeah, and Ethan. Okay, and then oversight committee on the 16th of February.
Propose we receive and note those.
Okay, I second that. All those in favour? Okay, anyone against? And abstain. Thank you. So 5C, minutes recommendations to consider and agree. The first one is to, from oversight, to recommend to full council that LJD coaching be funded at the same level again for an Easter food and activity programme, and to establish a consultation with residents on future developments of schemes. Would you like to?
Well, hopefully you've seen the paper on that, and we're really talking about the same thing, the same kind of approach as we did at summer and at Christmas. Because LDD coaching is going to do another 4 days, the same as they did at Christmas. I'm proposing that we fund them to the same level, which is a maximum of £6,000 for 400 local children for 4 days. That hasn't come about in So depending on the numbers, you know, if none of the children are on free school meals, it might cost us up to £6,000. But in real life, about 45% of the children who go are. So at Christmas we allocated 6,000. We spent about 3,000 on that programme, and also £300 to cover staffing costs for a breakfast club. So that Liam can extend the day from 10 o'clock start to 9:30 start, and have a breakfast club. He's managed to get the food from local supermarkets and so on. So this is for staffing costs. The other thing that I wanted to do was to see if anybody was interested in perhaps forming a councillor group to have a think about how we might, what we're doing in terms of food and activity programmes, and how we might kind of understand whether what we're doing is the right thing, enough, whether we need to do something different. The Deputy Town Clerk has been involved with Cornwall Council, who are running an action day at Berries Avenue on the 4th of April, and he's finding out for us whether Cornwall Council will let us
I imagine we will.
have some stand or something on that. So that might be the first kind of bit of consultation we do, to go down to Berries Avenue and have a kind of extended meet the councillor there. But also, I think it's probably the right time now to just have a think about what we're doing in this respect, and you know, whether we want to extend our ambitions. So that's the proposal. Those two things: £6,300 for the Easter food programme, and convene a group of interested councillors to discuss potential consultation opportunities.
Any questions? Comments? Sharp?
Just a comment. I fully support this proposal, and I'd like to be involved in that group of councillors to discuss potential consultation opportunities if possible, if it passes. But this is wonderful. We know the work that has gone before has been incredible, and such fantastic feedback from families, and so fully behind this. It's really great. Thanks for putting it together.
Okay, so we've got a proposal. I'd like to second that proposal. All in favour? I think that's everybody, isn't it? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Number 2 is to recommend the corrections to standing orders and financial regulations suggested with the smaller and larger changes document for council. So this is kind of so we've been through the standing orders. There are, as you saw from the documents, there are some very small changes like numbering and small changes, and yes, so we're really good for questions on those. Questions? Okay, just take out sort of references to committees that possibly don't exist anymore and that sort of thing. Right, so I'd like to propose that we accept those recommendations for the corrections.
Second that.
All in favour? Against? And abstaining.
I haven't read fully through it.
That's fine.
Everybody can count that quickly.
That will shout if...
Brilliant, okay. So item number 6, correspondence received.
Yeah, we've had a number of pieces of correspondence which we have circulated on the agenda. Just to say, these are not for debate this evening, these are just to make sure that it's, people are aware of what's been put into the council. We received a request for the council to sign up to the Armed Forces Covenant. Officers will investigate the implications and bring a paper to a future meeting. We received a letter from a 6-year-old resident concerned about the amount of building on green fields, and it struck us in the office. It's great to hear from a younger person in our community and how concerned they are, and I'm sure councillors will take those things on board, and the Deputy Mayor said she would write an acknowledgement of that. We received a letter of thanks from Bude Pride for flying the flag to mark the LGBTQ History Month. And we received a letter from the Equality Diversity Officer at the headquarters of the British Legion regarding the flying of flags at Shoulder Hill by the War Memorial. The letter reiterated the Legion's commitment to inclusion as an organisation and outlines a range of initiatives it is undertaking to support LGBTQ plus veterans, and concludes, our support for the current and former LGBTQ plus members of the armed forces and their families is therefore unequivocal, and we are not aware of any reason why the pride flag should not be flown as a symbol of commitment to the LGBTQ plus community, as long as the usual flag protocol is followed. So, fantastic.
Thank you. Item number 7, opportunity for Cornwall councillors present to discuss Cornwall council issues relevant to BSTC. Nikki, would you like to? I changed it because you were here first.
Right, good evening everybody. Some of you don't know me because I haven't been here for ages, so that's sort of my first apology, because I always have another meeting at the same time as yours, so, and again I've got 20 minutes and I'm going to go again, so I apologise for that. Obviously I'm Nikki Chopat, the Cornwall Council for Poundstock, and obviously since the division changes I now look after a little bit of Shorelands, so I'm sort of the back end of the Bude, I call it. That sounds wrong, doesn't it? But yeah, so anyway, I've obviously been a councillor now for 10 years. I'm quite involved with what goes on in Cornwall Council, but also I'm very keen to make sure that Bude in this area is very much shouted about. I'm chair of a cross-border health committee, which Lorraine obviously knows all about. I'm also involved with the cross-border cycle path project, which seems to have got a little bit quiet at the moment, but obviously I was going to just let you know that that's still there or thereabouts. I'm on the Health and Adult Social Care Committee, both Sean and I are on that. We had a very interesting meeting about that yesterday, which I won't bore you with, but obviously the usual thing is, you know, ambulance numbers are dire. Yeah, I was going to say, oh, you want to read that? So yeah, you know, the whole thing is quite depressing, but you know, there's sort of good news around, and obviously Sean and I both shout about Stratton MIU and how that works. And on that note, Stratton MIU, we've not had a cross-border meeting for a little while because actually Stratton MIU is working at the moment, and we haven't had any major issues about overnight openings and closing. So we're trying to sort of keep it quiet really, because while it's working and while people are using it, then we can't really complain. So I'm not keen to have lots of meetings, which hopefully most of you are quite pleased about. What just touched me actually, just as you obviously Councillor Purchase was talking about the school, the after school clubs and such. Have you applied? Because I know you haven't applied to me, but under the community chest, obviously both us and Councillor Roy all have a little bit of money, and if you haven't allocated your £6,000 onto your precept or under section 137, we obviously do have some money, so the fund for that opens again on the 1st of April, so although it might be too late for the Easter bit as such, we could probably wangle it a little bit to make sure that you get that money through Easter, so it would be a share between the three of us.
Yeah, on the point of that, closing date was the 25th of February.
Yeah.
I had 2 late applications and they've accepted.
They've accepted them. Oh, okay. So if you get an application in now, there might be. I haven't got any money left on mine, to be fair, but sure, man. But obviously the new one. What I'm thinking is next year. Yeah. Try Peter. But anyway, so I'm just thinking if that helps you with your budget going forward, you know, make sure you use us as well in that respect. The other thing, obviously, that Ian helped me with earlier is a tree that I've donated to Bude-Stratton Town Council. It's an 8-foot cherry tree, which apparently is in your office now.
Not my cup.
Has it grown?
It's part of the Cornwall Council about trying to sort of make sure we're all doing our bit for the carbon footprint, you know, starting with whatever, and I know that you're already doing some of that anyway. I chose to use part of my community chest last year to buy some trees. Unfortunately, with one thing and another and breaking my ankle and all that stuff, it's been sat in my garden for a little while. So it needs planting. You don't need to put a plaque on it or anything. It's just obviously it could be there for, you could do it for the King's coronation as a commemoration of that, or you could have done it for the Queen's Jubilee, obviously, issue still have. But anyway, whatever you want to choose to do with it, absolutely fine. And I think that's about it. The other thing I just want to do a bit of advertising for is the network meeting on Monday. It's the last official View area network meeting before we change to something horrendous called a CAP, which is a community area partnership, which in layman's terms is we're joining with Camelford, which makes this whole sort of network thing quite unwieldy. I think it's probably the right way of putting it, but we're willing to give it a go. I mean, so the last meeting is here at 7 o'clock on Monday, and we're obviously just going to finalise what's happened with the network. Also do a little bit of what went wrong, what went right, because quite a few of you have benefited from the highway schemes that have gone through the last 2 or 3 years. I know that it hasn't always been good for you, but it hasn't always been good for some of my patch either. So, you know, it's about trying to work out what to do next, because the new CAP will give us more money each, whereas at the moment we only get about £11,000 per councillor. We're going to get £52,000. So it's quite a big chunk of money which we should be able to get down to you guys. So again, so come along on Monday and find out what it's all about. And then, the last thing on that is about the levelling up money, which again Ian mentioned earlier. There is a presentation on Monday just to talk about the next tranche of levelling up money. And again, it'd be good if somebody from Bude-Stratton could come for that, just to hear what you might be able to apply for next time. And I think that's about it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sean?
Firstly, Deputy Madam Chair, Mayor, I apologise to the members for being late. Previous meeting went on and traffic lights are everywhere. Yeah, just to give you an update as to what I've been doing the last month. On the 6th of February, there was, at the Faulkner Hotel, there was a devolution deal presentation held by the Leader of Council, Linda Taylor, and the Chief Exec, Kate Kennelly, and legal officers. Those attended, there's a few people in the room. Made very pertinent questions to the officers of the council following a brief presentation outlining the devolution deal. I felt from the audience or the participants, they felt a bit confused as to what it was all about, and some members of the attendees stayed behind to discuss matters in more detail, and I believe they received more detailed answers than in the meeting. So there was some criticism that it only ran for an hour, but that was the time allotted for that. Now the team have been all over the county holding such meetings. Some have been good, some have been well attended, some not so good. And with regards to timescales, the public consultation finished on the 15th of Feb. The results have been collated from the public questionnaire, which was an online questionnaire. I don't think any of you actually were able to deal with that. And these results will be debated at full council in April. From that, we'll obviously report back to the parishes. On the 9th of Feb, Councillor Vicky Coulson, your lead member for housing, Oliver Monk, who's the cabinet member for housing, and Ian Mason and myself visited a site adjacent to Morrison's, which at the moment is just being used as a dumping ground for one of the utility firms at the moment, which is not good. Now it was discussed that could be, you know, the one opposite the youth dentist. It was basically a car park. Yeah. It was set aside for some community use, but that hasn't gone forward, and it's still owned by Cornwall Council. That's why we dragged Oliver Monk down here to say, look, there's a site which would be ideal for social housing. Social housing, not affordable, but social housing, social housing there. Now, he's taken it away to discuss with the officers that deal with that sort of thing. So I'm waiting for him to come back to me. I did chase him last week at full council, and he did promise to come back to me this week, but that's Friday tomorrow, so I'll chase him again in the morning. I don't know how you felt, Vicky, it went.
It felt very positive,
Yeah.
particularly when he didn't realise what land there actually was there. And I must admit, I myself was a bit surprised by the size of the block. Because after you went, I went and had a bit of poke around in the undergrowth to find out exactly how far back it went and what have you. Yeah. So yes, I think
Yeah, it's an ideal site because of the
yeah.
location in terms of walking to school. doctor's surgery, dentist opposite, if you can get in. You've got Morrison's and all other facilities local to that, so it'd be an ideal social housing site, so I'm really pushing for that. 10th of February, attended a Teams meeting which Nikki made reference to about the Bude and Camphor Levelling Up Fund. It was just Peter LeBroy and I attended by Teams meeting because we just couldn't get there with other commitments. Basically, it was decided at the end that Councillor Barry Gordon, who's on the Camelford side of the fence, Nikki, myself and Peter would arrange a meeting with the interested parish councils to discuss how the best way we could work together to attain the maximum levelling up funds that we could, rather than it all go to the big towns. So that's what we're hoping to do. And on Monday that will give you a bit more information if you're able to attend that meeting. Full council on the 21st Feb. Basically to deal with budgets. There's an item with regards to Hackney carriage licence, but it didn't really affect the operations here. There's mainly sort of in towns like Truro, etc. Obviously, another big talking point was costs and the future of Tall Point Bridge and the Tamar Bridge and the Tall Point ferries that went on for quite some time. The budget, as I say, was set for next coming year, which you probably had information on. On the first, we refer to the Health and Adult Social Care Review and Scrutiny Committee, which is purely to go through this document, which has already been passed by officers of the Cabinet. There was a meeting, or a chance meeting, for us to be updated with regards to the integrated care boards, where they're working with our officers of Cornwall Council. Some things that came out of it, which is really disappointing for this part of Cornwall, is that there's no intention for a second hospital in this location. Good things that came out with regards to the operations at Bodmin. They've now got a MRI scanner and a CT scanner. That's in place, which they didn't have before. And also they're going to redevelop part of the site to provide 2 urgent treatment theatres. And basically just discussing the health inequalities throughout the county. So it's trying to level up what's happening throughout the county with regards to health. Yeah, that's basically it. Oh, and the last thing is we know that the Bude Police Inquiry Office is open, but there's going to be an official opening by the Police and Crimes Commissioner and the Chief Constable on the 11th of March at 1:30. I think you guys have been invited. No?
I've not seen anything to...
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I've been invited. Well, Nikki and I are on the crime panel.
I didn't get invited though. So
I did, because I'm an advocate councillor, which I didn't know. But also the 2 other members from Cornwall Council haven't been invited, but they've been invited to the ones in their patch. But we're trying to resolve that matter. That's basically it. So if there's any questions. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
No.
I look forward to hearing about the plot.
sorry?
I look forward to hearing about
Yeah,
the...
I'm really pushing on that one because it's only rumours as to what it could potentially be. Yeah.
Is that where they were going to build the band?
Excuse me? Excuse me?
I'm talking to Chris. Is that where they were going to build the band?
What, sorry?
Is that where they were going to build the band?
Yeah.
Ah, right.
Yeah, the scout hut.
Yeah, with regards to the scout hut, sorry to...
Yes.
With regards to the scout hut, we are looking at working with Kavana to provide a site there for them.
Be interested to hear how that's going.
A positive outcome on that, yeah, hopefully, yes. But it's also very early in the stages, so as soon as I've got any detail, I'll come back to you.
Right, thank you. Kevin?
Yeah, I was not really a question, it's just a personal observation, really. I'll be amazed if that public consultation comes back as anything other than, we would love a mayor, thank you very much, because in my opinion it was remarkably biased. I was collared in a local coffee shop by somebody pushing the consultation. I thought they should have had a badge saying, I'm for the mayor or something like that, sort of like I'm for Brexit or whatever, you know. It was absolutely disgustingly biased, and I think the results of that consultation should go straight in the bin and have a proper one. But it's just a private observation.
Yeah, but that private observation would be helpful for members like me, because I haven't been approached personally about the devolution deal. I'm still on the fence about it. I'm to be convinced either way.
I have made my feelings known to
Yes,
the council with minimal response, in fact.
Okay, well, if you'd like to copy me in on that,
Yeah,
I'll
sure,
take that for you.
And to me.
Yeah. The more we hear about it, the more we can deal with it in the council chamber.
Martin, did you want to?
Oh, I just wanted to agree with Kevin. Actually, it was something that I was thinking of saying was that it was worded in a way that it said, "Do you want Cornwall to be rich and happy forevermore, and sunlit uplands?" And you say yes, and then that's agreeing to the deal. And it's almost as if you were being unpatriotic to Cornwall if you said, "I strongly disagree." It was really, really badly written.
It was
really biased.
To be honest, I agree. It was a very strong sales.
And it does rather sort of put into question the results, because it was like sunlit uplands or not. Yeah, of course we want sunlit uplands. At what price?
Yeah, just another big red bus.
Yeah, it was a big red bus. Yeah.
Consultation period, the first 2 weeks, there were over 3,000 questionnaires put into the council. In the remaining 10 weeks, there's only another 350. So that gives you some idea of what public interest is and how it's going to go forward.
Sure.
So it's going to be a difficult one for us to debate. But the more we've got from you guys personally, the better, or the easier it's going to be for us to argue a case. As I say, I'm still sitting on the fence. I don't want to.
In terms of the deal, I think the worry from, if I may, Jackie.
Sorry.
Yeah, just very briefly.
Yeah, I mean the worry is that environmental and planning legislation will get rolled back in these investment zones, and that's the biggest worry, because it does mean building green fields and destroying nature, and we have to stand up for both of those things. So, thank you.
Thank you. Lovely. Great, thank you both very much. If you've got other things that you need to be doing,
I've meeting.
I was going to say, yeah. I promise to try and come back more regularly.
Thank you. I'd like to see you more.
Yeah.
We're meeting tomorrow.
So?
We're meeting tomorrow about the public footpath. Oh! I sent you an email.
Yes.
Good.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we'll move to public participation, then we're going to move item 11 up to the next piece of the report from the town team. Okay, so public participation. Ms Jennings?
Silly thing, really. Those telescopes, one by the swimming pool and one by the lock gates. They're all red. They're an eyesore. I mean, who owns them?
Imagine Cornwall Council?
No, it is. Right, I have some recollection of this. There's a private company that owns them. It did change its tenure a few years ago. I do remember having some interaction with them to try and get something out of them in terms of refurbishments, which I seem to recall I was promised at the time, but nothing's transpired. So yeah, so I
Just go and rip them down. They're eyesore.
well, they're not actually ours, but there was some dim and distant deal done by which this firm used to come and service them, but clearly they've fallen into disrepair. So yeah, we'll have a look as to who we should be talking to take them away.
Well, just send a couple of the council boys up and just rip them out. That's all you've got to do, isn't it?
Not ours.
Well, don't matter. It's an eyesore in our town. They shouldn't be allowed to do it.
Alright, thank you. Chris?
There's a couple of things, some information with regard to what the Cornwall councillors were saying about that particular site. That is an ideal site for there to be a slipway for access onto the canal by suitable boats. we did a document back in about 2010, and it's never been acted on. One of the Woodville Cornwall District Council then just saw the pound signs because it's land and they want to build on it. But
I think you may, well, between us we're getting confused which site, because I think the site the councillor was talking about was the one up by Morrison's, which was the replacement site where they relocate to.
Did you not say anything about the bandwall site?
I think he means the site where the band will go to, up by Morrison's. I'm pretty sure that's the one we're talking about. The potential slipway site wasn't actually mentioned in...
Well, it should be. Right, so the other thing is, I'll be brief. You may be aware, on the 8th of July this year, it's the 200th anniversary of the canal of trade starting between Bude and Hosiery. Quite an important thing, because by that time, the canal was almost completed. It only had another 2 years and it was completed. Huge area that was operational. So we will be endeavouring to do some celebrations. In particular, a celebratory event which will be at the White Hart Hotel in July. We can't have the 8th because it's St Peter's Fair week and they're a bit touchy about that. Well, you wouldn't be able to move the guy who's going to do it for us, a carvery. So we're keen to try and maintain that. But some of the other things could be affected by the cost of living and all that stuff. But we hope to do as much as we could. We'll wait and see if Hosiery Junior School is interested. The last time I had a 2-hour question and answer session with some 8-year-olds, which was quite an interesting experience, to say the least. To be fair, and there were some sensible questions, and obviously there were some that you know. But anyway, we're open to do that. We're open to have visits to the whole range of sites in October. The reason we've chosen October is that when I did a run around all the places that we could go and see, was in June, and there was so much vegetation in places you couldn't even see if there was remains of a canal there or not. So we've put that back until October before their clocks change. So hopefully that will do. That's a free trip. You don't pay for the transport. We'll be stopping, I think, at the Red Post Inn for lunch, which you have to pay for yourself, and hopefully that can be affected by how the cost of things are. The thing is, with catering places, I think when they set their price during the year, they don't like to change. They don't like to change it unless they really have to. So we'll wait and see. With a commemorative thing, that will be an event when the Mayor plus one of Bude-Stratton and the Mayor of Hosiery Council plus one, if they've got a one to be with or whatever, will be guests at that event. And there'll be some entertainment by Cousin Jack, if you like, sea shanty and all that stuff. So watch this space. We'll write to you a little bit later with what it's all about and give you the invitations to attend, but that's what we hope to do.
Lovely, thank you very much.
Okay.
Sounds good. Great. Anyone else? Yeah, thank you very much. Right, so item 11, move that up the agenda. So that is to receive a progress report from the town team on the Bude Town Centre Vitality Project and agree the process of letting the vision and investment plan consultation contract. So, Tony and Lynn, did you have a presentation
No,
or a
no, not really.
report?
Yeah, okay.
Ian kindly put together a report that I think you've all seen that was attached to the agenda. There's very little really to add to that. We are in a position obviously where we know that we've got the funding. I suppose the next stage is now very much that's been described on here really for you to make the decision really to enable the town team to move forward. So to give them the authority to look at how we're going to manage the tender bids and then move forward from that point, and also delegate the officers' authority to actually support us doing that. So are there any questions?
I saw you put out a call to have a meeting with the town team. Have you got a meeting now in Canberra?
No, not yet. We were waiting for, obviously we need to wait. No point having a meeting until we've had a decision this evening. Once we've had that, then we'll go ahead and organise a meeting with the town team.
Okay, well, a supplementary question then is that when you say here in consultation with the town team based on a scoring matrix, will that be decided at the meeting?
Yeah.
Well, in effect, a councillor should make a proposal to accept or move for the delegation requested. So to agree the process that the town team will meet. I mean that's what the town team needs to meet to determine how this is done, and you're given the authority and the fact that we can then let a tender based on the agreed matrix.
That was a ventriloquism, Matt. That was my I'm waving my pen.
Okay, would you like to
I propose what Keith just said.
I'll second that if it needs to be seconded.
all those in favour?
Is that what's in here?
Yes.
Okay.
Basically,
Yes.
what I've written out in there.
Yes, sure.
Yeah, just to update you, as I've gone to the trouble of looking, as of today, there's been 939 views of the contract on Contracts Finder, and we've had 6 positive responses, not in yet, but positive inquiries from companies. So we anticipate at least some of those, if not all of them, will answer the tender.
And the money is now in our bank account.
Yes, sorry, that's the important thing. The money's there. Thank you.
Yes. Great stuff, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Okay. And back to number 9. To receive a report on the tender exercise for Compass One, agree upon funding options and authorise the process of contract review.
Yes, well, we get into landmark parts of this project. We had the tender process, we had 5 tenders received, which we felt was very good interest and shows, I say keen competition. There was quite a range between the bids, but so 3 have been discounted due to cost and timescales of which they were proposing to deliver. But it did leave us with 2, well, on the face of it, pretty viable tenders. Now we are still in the process. This is an ongoing. These things take a little time to work through, and as long as you authorise this evening this to continue, we've actually arranged for interviews of the 2 contractors on Monday to go through their programmes in the detail. So at some stage, I put this onto open agenda because it's important people understand the overview of what's going on, but I can't really go into names and details of contractors because or potential contractors because we're still in that active evaluation stage and we haven't decided who to actually recommend, which one it will be. So I can't tell you whom exactly, but so we had 2 on the face of it viable people or contractors that can do the job with the specialisms required, but we're going through that with a finer tooth comb. So that's all the positive stuff. The less positive stuff and what we always feared is that obviously prices have gone up and in terms of costing there is a funding gap. At the moment that lays somewhere between 46 and 60,000 pounds, between what we had in from the various sources and pledges and from what the project would now cost to deliver. We're talking to the other funders as to what can be done around that. I will say that we've had a positive discussion with the lottery, and whilst they cannot guarantee, or at this point couldn't guarantee any more money, there is certainly a process they've given us to go through to talk to them and apply for more money. And that's sounding positive. I can't put hand on heart and say, yes, they will give you, or give us that gap. But I would be hopeful that a reasonable level of funding will come through from the lottery. But as it stands, and this is, it is a critical point, the timescales, again, as always it seems in this project, are now getting crunched. If this project is to go ahead, certainly to go ahead this year, we need to be making decisions in the next couple of weeks and awarding that contract. So really, tonight is your opportunity to make that decision. What we're asking you to do is, firstly, approve the process that we will interview and evaluate the two remaining contractors and to delegate the appointment of the contract, the award of the contract, to myself in consultation with the steering group. And secondly, at this point, for this to happen, the council would have to backstop guarantee the funding gap, because we can't wait. The lottery process would be, they can't, in their decision-making process, it would be mid-April when they would actually approve or otherwise their decision around any funding gap. And if we wait to mid-April, we miss the time slots. We need, if the contractor needs to be appointed so they can mobilise and actually start work in April. So it's a fairly big decision, it's an important decision, but in a nutshell, that's where we are at the moment.
Yeah, I just got a point of clarity on decisions. Point 1, to approve the process, interview and evaluating the selected contractors and delegate the appointment of the chosen contractor. Are we delegating the decision to choose the contractor to you?
Well, it is both. I mean, we will, fundamentally, we will probably, we'd like to go with the lowest price contractor. That's the normal way, as long as both their quality and their programme work.
Right.
So that's what we're hoping for. Yeah. But again, until we've got the QS and the structural engineer with us, so they will, that are going over and they'll, so something will come through the discussion with the contractors or the bidders, right, as to they need to convince our specialists that what they have put on paper and their pricing do work, because obviously no one wants to appoint someone that can't deliver or has a big gap in their own thinking that then can deliver something different that we don't want. So we need to go through that conversation with them. But we are, at this stage, we feel we've got two experienced contractors. So it's, on the face of it, they've done other jobs. We know that already. So there's a reasonable level of confidence, but that means you do need to make sure.
Okay, thank you.
I've got two questions. The first is, if we approve the money now, is this going to jeopardise our ability to get the money from the lottery? I mean, are the lottery going to say, well, it's paid for? Why would we come up with another?
I knew someone asked this question, and I asked this directly. We had a meeting yesterday, and I did ask this directly, and I was assured not. They appreciate that the decision is not that we are saying, oh, we've got the money and we've put it in, no problem. we don't need to ask you. They know it's only being done because of the timescales. So I was assured that they would still consider properly our application.
My second question is, there's quite a lot of contingency built into these bids. So I suppose I'll be looking for some assurance that that contingency would only be dipped into you know.
Oh, indeed. Yes.
Approval of the steering group and so on.
It's-
That could be.
Well, it's a tricky one. Obviously, contingencies, one of those things. It needs to be there. We actually took most of the contingency out of the bid itself. So the bids would otherwise have been higher. Because ordinarily, contracting often, you would actually write a contingency in. So in effect, say to the contractor, add 30 grand to the bill or to the contract price. And the first thing you do when you operate the contract is take that out and say, well, we're not paying that unless we need to. And then you drip it back in against specific items. So that's how it will work. So very much we will, the way we've structured it now, they haven't actually bid for most of the contingency, but we still need to set it aside. The lottery would need to see that we've set aside contingency. That's a whole risk management. And dare I say, some of it will be used. I mean, that's why the projects, there is always the unexpected, and those bits need to be costed and put back in. But clearly we are not looking to give it away. We will manage that, and that in itself, if things go very well, means that funding gap gets smaller, and what has to go in reduces.
Martin.
Can we just get this straight then, potentially? On the funding, 2023 current, BSTC staff, £10,000. What does that refer to?
Right, okay.
I've got a supplementary question as well.
Okay, the way this is shown is to put together to the lottery as to how things, in terms of who's putting what into the pot. So in effect, that's a notion, not the right word. We've made an assessment of time. So it's not extra bill in that we are paying, but staff will be working on this. And we've made an allowance to say staff time is going in and it should be taken account of. So the lottery has seen that's part of our contribution.
Okay. So the £40,000 is from BSTC reserve, so we're looking at potentially £100,000 if the lottery don't come through.
Worst case scenario, yes.
Okay. I have to say I'd rather spend it on housing and hungry people, but that's my opinion, and I'll vote that way.
If we put toilets in there, then...
We'll use it as a toilet already, I think.
Oh.
Any other questions?
Very good up there.
No.
Any other questions?
I would just like to suggest that we go ahead with this as soon as possible, because I was up there the other day and that edge is getting ever so close. And if we lose Company Point, there's going to be an awful lot of very, very angry people in Bude.
Anyone else like to make a proposal or shall I leave it out? So proposing that we approve the process of interviewing and evaluating the two selected contractors and delegate the appointment of the chosen contractor to the town clerk in consultation with the project steering group of councillors. That's the proposal. Someone would like to second it? Yeah, Sharon, second. All those in favour? And against? Abstain. And then the second part, proposing to approve the use of additional town council reserves in aiding the shortfall in funding established, told you my classes, didn't I? Aiding the shortfall in funding estimated up to the amount of £60,000 with clear updated figures provided once the response has been received from funding partners.
Second that.
Thank you. All those in favour? And against? And abstain. Thank you. Yeah.
I haven't got a clue what you're talking about. You can explain it to me.
We've just agreed to go ahead with instructing contractors.
We evaluate the two. We have two contractors in the running. We will finish evaluating, making sure that they can do the job.
What?
Compass Point.
Yeah.
This is the demolition and rebuilding of Compass Point.
Yeah, I got that bit.
So we have a price from two contractors. We will make sure that or one of them at least can do the job to our satisfaction, that they've actually given us a proper bid, it will make sense, and they can deliver it.
Yeah.
And then I've just been given authority on the basis that we establish that we can give them the contract to start the work.
The bit I'm trying to get to, who's actually going to oversee it? Which one of you councillors is going to be there, making sure that they actually do it properly?
Well, it won't be the individual councillors. There's a team of office staff plus the
All right, council, whatever.
Yes, it's staff, and we have a consultant QS, quantity surveyor,
Right,
and
yeah.
we have a structural engineer, and we have some ecology people. So we'll have the right people on board.
Right,
And that's part of the project funding here as well.
Yeah, I got that, but I just,
Yep.
I wanted to make sure that it's going to be done by proper people, not some, because you did say you're going to take the cheapest one. Yeah, well, that'd always work, do it.
Oh no, we don't just take. We'll only take the cheapest one that we are assured can do the job.
Ah, right, that's
Yeah,
right.
no, we're not going. This is not a cheap process.
Yeah, exactly, that's-
and it's very much overseen by our contracted specialists as well.
That's all right then.
So on the basis that we're convinced next week when we meet them that they can do the job, we will then let them the tender, and the council also just approved to backstop the funding to make sure it gets done. But we hope we get more funding from the lottery.
Well, yeah, I was just thinking of thinking somebody go up there with just a JCB and knock it about, and that, you know, that'd be it. Good.
Okay, item number 10. To receive a report on the wheeled sports facility and authorise the use of the set aside reserves to commission the design and planning commission elements of the project.
Okay.
Are we starting with Mike or with Ian?
Either or.
Shall I just quickly read
Yeah,
the
go
report
for it,
and
mate,
in the
yeah.
interest of time, I won't read it all out, I'll just whiz through it. So effectively, the approach that you took, guided by the building contractor that we use, the building specialist, he consulted with various different skate park builders and others, and the way that they proposed and recommended to go about this was what is called, as you see from the report, a JCT design and build contract. So you'd let a contractor do the whole thing from scratch, basically, the design and build to one contractor. What we found in putting together applications for funding in terms of their success and the feedback on those is that some of the funders have felt we haven't progressed far enough with the project for them to be able to promise the funding. And again, the reason we've gone for that funding and taken that path is that if we didn't, we'd have missed those deadlines and potentially we'd have missed out if we'd have been successful. So it was worth going for those anyway. So what we're now proposing is that to answer those criticisms or those observations that we're not far enough down with the project is splitting a contract, effectively asking organisations to do the design, planning and consultation, and then having a break, and they won't necessarily get the contract to build, but we would be able to use the money that the council has set aside that was going to be match funding for the whole scheme to move this bit forward and pay for the design, consultation and planning. So effectively we're chunking up what was going to be one big scheme, in essence, to get it further down the road. Is that?
See, the issue I think we're going to have is once a skate park company designs a skate park, that becomes their intellectual property. We put in planning permission so that we can get the funding. They are not going to let somebody else build it. A company A skate park is a company A skate park, design and build. So the tender process needs to be phased, but it has to be the whole package.
I would agree.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah, you said they might not deal with the
I
yeah.
see.
It's a tender for the entire project, but we will break it into stages.
Indeed, yes.
And I think, like, you know, hopefully you've read the letter of comfort from Cornwall Council. It wasn't as strong as I would have liked, but the salient point is paragraph 4, the final transfer of the site from Cornwall Council to Town Council ownership will not be completed until planning permission has been granted. To get planning permission, we need a design. So we have to go to tender.
I should be clear, Councillor. When I said they might not necessarily get to build it, that's if we don't get the
Oh, right,
funding.
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sorry, I can see a misunderstanding clearly.
Yeah.
But if we don't get the funding, then there isn't any money to build it, rather than it might be a different.
Then we'll have to look at
It's a design and build, and there'll be a break point. So
Yeah.
the commitment won't be to fund a build that we haven't got the funding.
Yeah.
Just to add a little bit of weight to it, Launceston are a close rival. They put in a funding bid to the same pot we put in. they already have a design and planning permission. They got the entirety of the money and we didn't get a penny. And it basically boiled down to them being ready to launch. So that's effectively where we are. If we want to get on with this, we need to do it. So that is my proposal. We move to a phase tender and we authorise the use of the ring fence money. Sorry.
Would you like to go together first?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah,
We'll
yeah.
come back to that
Yeah.
proposal.
We've just had a little bit of a problem with Katie's Corner because we were asking to do things which weren't industry norm. Now, you know, I'm not saying this is wrong or a bad idea, but is this something that would be a normal thing for skate park companies to be faced with, or are we also trying to be a bit different?
I understand, this is much more than normal. Yeah, they do, I mean, skate park companies design and build. I mean, with the bit slightly less unusual is to having the break point, but on the basis that they will price for their work to do the design, and then we may need to go back and reprice. If it, heaven forbid, if there's a longer delay, there may be an inflation or something built in, but fundamentally we'll have a price, we'll know how much it will cost to deliver at the point. So that's industry norm as far as we understand for skate parks.
Just to add to that as well, I have spoken to the consultant that's advising us on both the Compass Point and this. He says that the contractors aren't unaware of that sort of particular process, particularly those that are doing projects that are funded by the lottery that has a two-stage process, because there is a possibility that you won't get the second stage. So they are used to having these sorts of things chunked up, if you like, in that sense.
Paul?
I'd just like to say, Madam Chair, that I find it deplorable.
And the chair.
Chair, forget the man. Obviously, I'm old.
Just you carry on.
Yeah, and that Cornwall Council will not devolve a tiny parcel of land to Bude-Stratton Urban District Council. End of conversation. Because they want to continue to have the power to have whatever they want, basically, there. And it was our land, and we gave it to county, and now they refuse to give it back. I find it reprehensible, if I use the slang. Just a point, Madam Chairman. Madam Chair, lovely chair. Right, lovely chair.
Presumably, because we'll be using the match funding, or what we set aside for match funding, there may come a time, if we get to the second stage, when we'll be asked to match fund again. Is that
Not
likely?
necessarily, because our match funding was going to match the entire exercise, which would have included the bit we're paying for now, if that makes sense. So I can't promise, but it would have contributed to the project to begin with anyway, if you see what I mean. So we're not adding extra work in that sense.
Yeah, there is a risk. There is a risk that I know with the Compass Point project that things spent before a certain point in time may not be included in lottery type calculations. But I think yes, we're a risk, but we won't move it forward otherwise. Yeah. That's when we come to that conclusion. We've been trying to get funding and it's just not happening until we've got the next stage.
And do we have any sense what the build stage would actually cost? Round numbers.
Am I allowed to say it out loud, or?
Well, we've got an estimate. I mean,
We've got an estimated budget, talking to other skate parks and the QS and the engineers, of about 370,000. Estimated.
Sean first?
I just want to second the proposal.
Sorry.
Before there was one other piece of information that should give.
Okay.
When we were unsuccessful with the Shared Prosperity Fund application for this, we were advised that we could apply to the Community Levelling Up Fund instead. I've progressed down the road of making that application, but it is not possible to squeeze the programme of design and build into the window that is allowed for the funding to be spent under the Community Levelling Up programme. So we will not be able to proceed this year with that particular application. I just thought you should know that before you go.
Madam Chair, just a very simple one.
Yes.
And that is, 7 years ago, we had it all funded, but county would not release the land. Just to let you know where we are. And now it's going to cost us money. But there you go. It's called county.
So we've got a proposal and a seconder. So all those in favour?
Bingo.
Yes. Yes, everyone, thank you.
Right, now I'm done.
Right, Mike.
Nobody else left.
So item number 12 is to discuss revising the roles of mayor and deputy mayor in order to further revise standing orders. So this I'll speak a little bit about this. This is quite a big change. So before we were just tidying the standing orders. This is a change. The reason is that the role of mayor is very broad and very demanding of energy, as we've appreciated over the last couple of years. And the aim is to sort of make it less daunting by splitting the public-facing role and the more sort of internal functioning of the council role. Many hands make light work and all that. So the two roles are quite different. If you would have read the role definition. And they will hopefully appeal to different sort of personalities and skill sets. The mayor retains the legal roles of civic head of the council and would chair for council meetings. The deputy mayor, as proposed, would be responsible for overall staff management, structure of the council, skills and training. I kind of see it as almost like a little HR type role. I don't know if that's a correct assessment. Plus they'd also help the council to form clear vision, objectives, and that kind of thing. So I think it's the two parts of that kind of, to me, seem a really good fit, because the person would be helping us to form the vision and objectives, and then also making sure that as a structure we're able to sort of deliver those the vision. So they go quite well together, I think. Is that summarised, do you think?
Yeah. I suppose from my perspective, the only thing I would say is that although it's clear that the mayoral role can be done by one person and has been done by one person in the past, I think to try and make the role more inclusive and to make it more available to people who've got caring commitments or work or whatever, this seems to be a way to try and do that, because at the moment it feels like the role is, it would be difficult for people with other commitments other than just being a retired person to be able to do.
Yes, thank you. Lorraine?
I've read what's been written about it. I don't know much about the roles, to be honest. So can I ask, were you involved with the discussion of the role? Because I think we need to listen to you, seeing you're the one in the role of deputy at the moment, and whether you think...
Let's be brief. My position in this role, but I think all we see is the amount of time and the amount of time and effort and work that Amanda has put in over the last 2 years is huge. There's a lot of work behind the scenes. And there is a real lot to take on. So the feeling was, if we could split that out, it would enable two people to work very closely together, but to have quite well defined areas of responsibility.
So if this, so if, say for instance this was last year and you're just starting a year in the role, would you be happy with this suggestion of change?
I don't know how to answer that. I don't see myself personally in this role.
In the deputy?
Yeah. Going forward from the proposal is that this would come into effect in May.
Yeah.
When all the chairs are re-elected and mayor and deputy mayor.
feels like a job description has been written with somebody in mind. And I look at this and it almost feels upside down. It's like the mayor. When I read it for the first time when it came through, and the image that came to my mind was Boris as the nice party, friendly face, popular face of the people, and behind him Dominic Cummings with the strings of power. And I know that's not a nice image, but when you read the job descriptions, it kind of seems upside down, that the management of the council is not in the hands of the head of the council.
No,
If that makes sense.
yeah, I think the wording is missing that the deputy mayor, in conjunction with the mayor, does those jobs. Because it seems to be
The way it's
totally
written,
independent
yeah.
of the mayor, and that's obviously can't be true.
To have, the deputy mayor to have overall responsibility for ensuring the vision and corporate objectives of the council. The mayor to chair full council meetings and be the civic head, taking on the title of mayor to provide, it gives the impression that the mayor's going to go out and kiss a few babies in front of the cameras,
Yeah.
and all of the real power is going to be behind the scenes. Just the way it's worded, yeah.
I also would like to say I agree with it because historically the mayors are usually male. This does give the opportunity for young females to be in positions of responsibility. As I know, but I'm not. But they can. But I think it should be in conjunction with, not totally independent of. That's all.
Yeah. The two roles would work, definitely would work together.
Oh, well, I know it doesn't say that. That's what Mike's saying.
Yes.
Mm.
Okay, Vicky?
Being still relatively new to all this, I always sort of understood that the mayor and the deputy mayor worked together, and that if the mayor couldn't attend, the deputy mayor attended, and that they sort of devolved the role or split the role between them. Whereas to me, this is like, as you say, like two job descriptions.
It is, yeah.
And it made me feel, looking at the job descriptions, well, I don't fit that, I don't fit that, I don't fit that. Not that I've got any aspirations, but it made me feel that it knocked me, if ever I should aspire, totally out of the equation. That's just my...
So could I ask you, if it was kept as one role, would you feel in the equation?
I don't know.
Because it's all of that.
Because it's both roles then.
I feel that mayor and deputy mayor, you have the mayor as a role, but the deputy mayor is another role. But between the two, I feel it should be more like a team effort rather than, well, you do this, you do that. That's just my sort of...
Did you want to come in?
If I just a bit of insight, and I'm not being hugely, I've been consulted on this, but not hugely involved in many respects, because this is down to you as councillors of how you want to operate internally. This is very much a way of how you as councillors kind of get things done, but it doesn't affect the decision-making process. It's a bit of an interesting concept. The mayor, as of statutorily, doesn't have any real power or extra power than any other councillor other than a casting vote. So it's not about decision making as I'm seeing it, this is just really about how you get things done or the mechanisms behind. And yeah, I mean Amanda has spent and her predecessor Bob spent a lot of time just keeping up to speed, just being aware of what was going on, giving an insight or review, or again highlighting when that's something we need to take to council, because mayors don't have decision making power, nor would a deputy mayor. But if you want someone on top of things, councillors need to spend time, and I do appreciate this has been put together in a way of trying to split that way that it splits between two councillors, because at the moment it's all falling on one, and historically the deputy mayor, dare I say, it has been a tiny bit, but a spare part. They haven't, not been offensive, but technically there is no defined role of a deputy, but you don't need to have one. This council has chosen to have one, but that's something the council in the past has chosen to have. And the only on paper is that, as Jackie's fine this evening, is when the mayor isn't here, you don't have to vote for who's going to chair the meeting because the deputy steps in. That's a very good job.
But the rest of the time, it's kind of, I don't know, I just feel like it's almost like it's you are the chair, and up to now the deputy mayor hasn't had a particular specific role. It's just kind of, well, you're there in case the other one isn't. Sorry, Kevin?
I just wonder whether we need to make this quite as formal a split. Because, let's face it, you know, this council's got a limited shelf life. We won't be the same council sitting around this table, I don't know, in whatever months or years to come. And we can't rule on what that council wants to do. So whatever we write will only apply around this table now. It won't be ongoing. So do we really need to go into this level of formality? Because we can all agree, or the mayor and deputy mayor can agree between themselves how to split their responsibilities. And it just seems to me that we're trying to do just a little bit too much fine tuning.
I guess just to come directly off that point, I see it as the opposite. This actually makes things very clear for people in the future what the expectation is, because as Vicky's just illustrated, seeing this looks like a job description, and you said you don't see yourself in either of these roles, but that is what the role actually entails, and because we've never actually seen it written down, it's like, oh whoa, there's a lot to it. It's essentially a full-time job for whoever takes on the mayoral position, and that means that that is not an inclusive role. It's not inclusive for primary carers or people at work, and I kind of see this as much as it looks like a job description, it's potentially opening a door in the future for people to go, well, yeah, I could actually see myself doing one of those positions, and it makes the split a bit more equitable, because essentially it's taking that massive burden of responsibility off one person who, as everyone said, has historically been a retired person that has a lot of time. There have been points when, I'm sure she wouldn't mind me saying, Amanda has almost been cracking under the pressure of what is expected, because she's had to be running to pick up children from school and doing drop-offs and sorting out all of those caregiving responsibilities. It means that her time has been split in ways that have meant that things haven't always worked to plan, and she's done her absolute best. But for me, this seems like a way that we can encourage more inclusive and broad demographics within the council in the future, because at the moment we're 50% female councillors. That's the first time that this has ever happened in this council, 50% female. And at the moment, 100% of the senior leadership roles are also female, which again is amazing. And in the future, it would be great to have younger people. And, we really can do better, and I think this is a good start. It might feel like you don't see yourself, Vicky. I don't necessarily see myself, but it's a guide. It's not everyone's doing the best. Do you know what I mean? I just feel like this is a good guide as a start.
But then perhaps if you want people to aspire to the roles, the language it's written in needs to be changed to make it people more likely to say, oh, hang on a minute.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
I could do that.
Yeah.
Rather than, oh God, that's total corporate.
Yeah, I see what you mean there. Yeah. Okay.
Also, I do, if I just come in, Martin, some of the skills needed and the roles are quite different. So somebody might be very comfortable to chair meetings and speak in public. Not me. To speak in public, and other people might be very good at organisation and be more involved in the sort of running of things. That's the thought was it would suit different people rather than it all being in one pot.
That catch-all. It's got to be everything.
Can I just ask, who was actually involved in creating this?
Well, the group of us that sat down and looked at the standing orders. And
Right.
we went through the whole of the standing orders, did the changes, tidying, and then stopped to think about this particular thing, really, to come back to you and say, do you think it's a good idea? Back to you, Kevin.
Well, I don't want to kind of hog the floor, but I think that we're you know, we're kind of looking at this around the wrong end of the telescope, because I think we can informally agree within this council how the roles of mayor and deputy mayor go. And another council with different personalities around the table will have a different way of doing things. They might decide, yeah, we want a figurehead mayor, we want a guy in a bow tie and a nice jacket to do nothing but shake hands and make speeches. And we want somebody else to do I dotted and T crossing. Or they might decide, we want somebody who's up for being involved, hands-on, pretty much 24/7, and we've got the perfect person, and that's the person we want. And I just think that to make this part of standing orders is, we can do it for ourselves, we can all agree, yeah, so we'll do this, but it's pointless putting in standing orders because future councils won't see it this way. So to me, it's something that should be much more informal, but I've said enough.
Couldn't the public ask a question?
Please go ahead.
I'm somewhat reassured by what Keith says in that the mayor's only power is a casting vote. But I also bear in mind that he said this is a big change as to what you're going to be doing internally. Now, from a point of view of the public, my thought is, if you split these two roles, does that in any way affect the accountability from the public point of view? And basically, if you thought about that, good, and if you haven't thought about it, then I'd really quite like to know that you did.
Is accountability would be affected?
Ultimately, it is the councils, which is as a whole, which is accountable, because say that neither, unless something is delegated, the only way of making decisions is either through a meeting of the council, a delegated committee of the council, or through a delegation to an officer, often that will be in consultation with sort of named councillors, but ultimately it's the officer responsible for making sure that the correct things are pulled through. So it doesn't change, it doesn't change. The council, if a decision were to be made, like we had earlier, where the council's delegated me to do something in councillors, that would still have to be a delegation the council gives. So it doesn't change, I don't think it does change the accountability, because you're not actually putting on the onus on an individual councillor the making of a decision. I think it's giving a guide. I mean, my advice is you've got a couple of ways of doing this, because whether it needs to be in standing orders is maybe slightly viewpoint. So I mean, if you could just agree to say this is the way this council will split the roles, and as long as you all know that and it's documented, whether it's in standing orders or not is not necessarily essential, but if we're going to do it, we need to capture it somewhere. So as we can get, I think it's probably thinking is we put it in standing orders means we keep sight of it, otherwise it's a document tucked away amongst many others, which so it's very much up to you. This is not something you have to do, it's obviously councillors have, for us a council thing, councillors have thought about this to try and make it work a bit better. You decide if you think that's the way forward.
It's clarity, isn't it? Mike?
Yeah, it kind of feels like the mayor and the deputy, whoever they may be, should define their own roles as a partnership. You know, because obviously I chose a right-wing political party because they're seemingly always in power, but you've got a micromanagement role and a sort of like a go out and do the nice stuff role. Who's to say the next two people will be comfortable with that? Like I say, right off the bat, my initial thoughts were, these have been written with people in mind. It just screams, this is a job for you and this is a job for you. And anybody that doesn't fit into those roles, like Vicky said, is less included and less inclined to go for a position. It's, if I'm interviewing people and the people that fit the role come in and apply for it, don't they? They don't come in to me and say, oh, that driving job you're offering, I'd like to split it with my mate, and
well, in the standing orders at the moment, it does specify that the mayor is responsible for the staff supervision. So in effect, the mayor is responsible for the staff appraisal of the town clerk, and the town clerk is responsible for the staff appraisal of everyone else. So the standing orders do specify that at the moment.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I suppose we could be more informal and say, well, the mayor could delegate that to somebody else. But that's not the case. That's not how the jobs are run at the moment. And I suppose the other thing I probably would say to people is, when in May, when we come up to voting for a new mayor, who's thinking about putting their name forward, and who's looking at that role going, oh my God, I would never have the time or the energy to do that, because any discussions we've ever had about who's going to take over the mayor in May,
More important
everybody
question
is
who's
stepped
going to
right
take over
back.
as deputy, I mean.
So I think there's a problem that we potentially can have in there.
I agree.
I mean, the purpose really was to just try and sort of break it down and make it more doable, not to create more barriers. How do you feel about this, Ethan?
I'm just listening to all the opinions expressed, and I'm just wondering if there's a way that standing orders can reflect the mayor or the deputy mayor's ability to delegate responsibility to other councillors. So if there are responsibilities, if the mayor is currently responsible for staff appraisal, does that necessarily mean that the mayor has to do it, or can it be delegated to other councillors, but the mayor still remains responsible for it without actually doing it themselves? Would that be
Almost like a supervisory role.
Probably in truth at the moment there's probably not scope to do to that kind of delegation, because there aren't that many things actually designated. I've mentioned one, and there are some other things which the mayor or the chair of the needs to do around signing certain documents, but they are few and far between. So most of those ones are legal requirements, as it were, so you can't actually get around that. But the ones that you probably going a bit too far. I mean, at the end of the day, we will be practical about those things. At the moment, clearly the mayor is indisposed, and again, technically, there is actually room for maternity leave in that actual sense. Obviously, not as an employee, but clearly, fully understand Amanda's taking maternity time because of she's had a baby, so practically, we say Jackie becomes acting mayor in that sense. So at the moment, I would go to Jackie as my go-to. I'm not bothering Amanda with issues. I would go to Jackie. So it's just a practical solution. So I don't think we don't go overkill on writing these that kind of delegation. I think it's probably a step too far.
Just can I ask Keith, historically, for people taking the job of a mayor, have they been given a list of all the things they have to do? Because this breaking down is quite a nice idea to actually know what you have to do. Because in the past you just got the job and off you go. Without realising you've got to do this and the other.
All of this.
I'm not doing that. I'm the mayor, I don't have to do it.
Well, I would suggest each mayor brings to the role their own approach.
Sure, but
in part, this is a reflection of what the council wishes to do. And again, I've probably said things like this before. If the council just wants to tick along, do the things it has to do statutorily, or do its planning consultation role, but doesn't particularly want to be run services or do big projects, you probably argue you wouldn't need a particularly or less active mayor and less active members. If the council wants to do lots of things and think about things, and that's what I'm seeing this council does, then collectively you as councillors need to be involved in that and hopefully divvy up into the bits you're interested in, and that's where increasingly kind of the mayoral role, it's not a statutory thing, it's just really a thing about how you collectively operate. And then there is a bit of the link back to the council, and I've said to you, I can't consult all 18 of you on everything, it gets quite messy, as it were. And we need a point of reference, and either that is through mayors and deputy mayors, or through chairs of committees, or we now have lead councillors, so we've got different ways of doing that, but just to give us some ways of having some, keeping the right people, or the most interested people, informed, and to ask the questions back to help us think as officers. So it's,
So the answer was no.
The answer was no.
Okay, do you want a proposal?
That we be given more time to think about it.
We could
Because
defer it
I
to
personally feel, I guess I've had a quick read through of it and everything, but I think more time should be given to be able to go away from this meeting, having listened to some of the other viewpoints that have been said, and then to revisit it, particularly with such a full agenda tonight.
Yes, I don't like the word formally, are formally redefined. That's a bit harsh.
Well, did I hear a proposal to defer?
Well,
I propose to defer this to
we
the
could
next
defer
meeting.
it if you think it needs tweaking in terms of
I think it needs
language
tweaking,
and-
I think people need more time to think about it.
Okay, I'd be more than happy with that if there is time.
Just
Like,
make a note that, it's March, so May isn't far away.
Yeah, that's
We
the-
can't be deferring it too much.
Mm.
I do
Okay.
think we are sort of making a bit of a mountain out of molehills here, personally. It sounds like you're trying to make it work smarter and a bit easier and a bit more fluid, so I would be up for it. In the end, what Mike was saying, it's exactly what this situation is, that the mayor is Boris Johnson and we're Dominic Cummings.
Not good
But that's we have to have faith that it's an open and honest relationship between the lot of us. So.
The wording needs to be changed. To have overall responsibility for development, implementation, monitoring, review of the council's vision and corporate objectives. To have political responsibility for effective corporate governance of the council. Nowhere in there does it say, I will enact the will of the council.
So
there isn't a single reference to the council.
So who did actually word it?
Well, that was my question right off the
We
bat.
go back to Philippa?
Well, the wording is taken from some research from other councils.
Right.
So that was the kind of gist of it. I suppose if we defer it, which is fair enough, could we get those ideas kind of coming forward for the rewording and so on, so that we can get something to April for the council.
Defer it with a rewording.
Yeah, because it's great to hear the suggestions now, but when we were talking about redoing the standing orders, we didn't have too many volunteers, so it would be good to have those, even if people could just send in, this is my track changes, these are the words I don't like, that kind of thing. That would be really helpful.
That is useful. Yeah.
I'll second that.
So how does the proposal go? So we're proposing to defer
help.
the decision from tonight, but we will rethink, we will gather more opinion.
We'll make a call for more opinions and more
input.
Yeah.
So Vicky, are you happy that's because
That sounds about right, yeah.
So that's-
Defer it and put more thought into it.
Okay. Was that seconded?
I'll second that, yeah.
Okay, all in favour? Thank you. Okay, item 13, key issues for all new councillors. Does anyone have anything to report?
I promise I'll be quick. Just a couple of things. I met with a new charity that Councillor Torrey, introduced me to AdSurf the other day, so just really wanted to make everyone aware of that charity. It's a new, basically adapted, accessible surfing charity. So they're going to be offering surfing lessons to neurodiverse and physical, mental, any difficulties. Just to let you know, I met with them. I didn't speak with someone else. They said about the accessible toilet at Summerleys is not working. Apparently the bar thing.
Oh,
the
so
little
the hoist.
hoist.
Again.
That's they
It's
said
on
it's apparently so. It's probably not the time to mention that, but it's just because it's on here. I've also spoken to the Pearl Exchange a couple of times, and I'm meeting with them next week to have a chat and an update. But they have got an impact review evening next Thursday. It's the 16th of March anyway. I've got the invite and I said I'd pass it around, but they have said that we're all invited and would like to see as many of us as possible. Did mention also something to Sean earlier, sorry Sean, I was going to hear this again. I've been contacted by Bude-Haven ARB, so that's the separate building, and I don't want to call it company, but educational services for children with basically that can't attend mainstream school, and they have asked me if they can do a project with the children there. They're going to go around Bude and come back to us and do a report on accessible things around Bude. I just said, yeah, it's fine. And they have said they may want to present that to us, so just to let you know that they have approached me for that. And I think that is about it. The survey is still with the people that are analysing the information, which is done professionally. So that still is delayed, but is still in the process. So that's me, I think. Sorry.
Great, thank you very much. You're busy. Martin?
Just to add to that, AdSurf are having a meeting, aren't they, on the 17th of March, for anybody who wants to go along and find out whether or not they want to volunteer as a coach.
I've already volunteered.
Okay, good.
But I'll come along.
Yeah, that's basically it, sorry. So if anybody is interested, they sound fantastic. When we did the Surf Forum, I don't know if everybody remembers, about a year and a half ago, one of the things that we discussed in that Surf Forum was Bude becoming a centre of excellence for adaptive surfing and training, and this is happening. It's really exciting, so hopefully we'll be able to give them our support. We've already put them in touch with Cornwall Council about leases, about reassigning the lease from the SwimSafe hut to them. They're now running SwimSafe as well, so they're going to do great things. It's really positive, isn't it?
Yeah,
Very
great.
good. Can I just add something that I just thought? Just in case anyone is interested, they do actually have their own accessible wheelchair that goes on the beach. So just in case anyone is asked, it is.
That's at Summerleys.
Yes. It is in a beach hut at the moment, locked up, but they, through AdSurf, you can just ring them up and they will lend it out to you, in case you don't want to sell it.
Well, I was going to say we could
Anybody
try one.
else? Sean?
Yeah, just a quick feedback from Monday's Bude Climate Partnership meeting. The main points, I'm not going to go through the whole thing because we're running late already. Recruitment is in full swing. They have already employed, I believe, 2 of the main roles, Community Energy Advisor and Sustainable Tourism Manager, to be starting soon. Had a lot of applications for the jobs that they're putting out, which is really, really great news. And the Climate Partnership agreed to join as an affiliate member with the Bude Chamber of Commerce, which is really good. So just kind of strengthening those partnership working links within the community. The EA are also really keen to be involved as like an oversight partner as part of the panel for climate jury. And we had a very interesting presentation from one of the delivery partners called Shared Future. That was all about climate juries and climate assemblies, and I won't bore you with all the detail now. If you want to know any more about it, then come and chat to me at some point or get in touch, because yeah, there's a lot to think about, but really interesting process, and that's a huge part of the kind of bid delivery is this climate assembly project. So yeah, that's me. Thank you.
Anyone else? Jamie?
Just to say that the phone's going off. I'm off. Yeah, of the Bude Youth Cafe, which has been running up at the venue bi-weekly for 14 to 18-year-olds, will now be moving to the Pearl Exchange starting tomorrow evening. It will remain bi-weekly from March, and then hopefully, if it meets their needs, which it should always be needs led by the young people, it will go to every week on a Friday, 7 till 9. Just called the Bude Youth Cafe.
Thank you.
It's called Bude Voices on Insta. There's an Instagram page just called Bude Voices.
And the age group?
14 to 18 for that. And then the Tuesday night one is 11 to whatever age decides.
Lovely, okay. So move on to item 14, to agree the award of the lease on Lower Wharf kiosk.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's been a fair bit of thrown around this. Essentially, I mean, we've let this as a commercial lease. That is a commercial premises, and that's grand. So I've circulated the bid values. There are some slightly different uses, but essentially people are seeing it as an ice cream kiosk. The highest bid is one that I said before is that we have done business with before, so we have confidence that they would be a good tenant.
Any questions? Comments?
Are we all predetermined after that even exchange? Oh, good.
Martin?
I would like to suggest, and I know that it has been done in the email exchange, that there's very little information come through with this stuff, and I don't necessarily agree that the highest bid is the best bid, although given the circumstances in the information available, there's not really any other way of choosing. And I would argue that there is a lot to be said for quality when it comes to these kind of things, and actually people who are looking to mention that they might use local suppliers, perhaps, might be looked at favourably than others in the future. So I think when it comes to writing bids or tender documents in the future, it'd be really nice if those things could be considered and asked for, because I think it's really important that we have we don't want litter all over the wharf, for example, if people are going to be having things, everything's in a packet, things like that, and I think we need to be in control of that, because it's our kiosk, and we are responsible ultimately. Thank you.
There are provisions about litter in the lease arrangement, but yeah, clearly, if councillors want to add criteria and think about that further, then yeah, there's a piece of work to be done. And again, this is where councillors will need to be involved to create that, because that doesn't just go or take away and say, in our view. So yeah, there's a bit of learning here, but in future, if you want to take more things on board, you have to sit down and work out a criteria by which we would then say to the bidders, this is what you're being judged upon. We didn't go through that process. Council, my understanding, designated this as a commercial lease, and we've gone through the normal process of letting a commercial lease. But yeah, next time round, people have to take that on.
Thank you.
I was just going to say, in terms of what the councillor said, it chimes for me, and it also made me think of the meeting that we've got, or the presentation that we're having from Cornwall Council next week around the decision-making wheel. I think that decision-making wheel, which is based on sort of donut economics, is very informative for social benefit and the like. So I think that would be very valuable.
Great. So we need to propose for real award.
number 10 is what I'm suggesting to you.
The proposal is to award, agree the award of the lease to tender number 10.
Proposed second, whatever.
Second, yeah, all those in favour?
Otherwise we're just not going to...
Is it all, it's all ice cream, isn't it? Because we've got no real information.
Yeah, well, everyone, unless they put anything else, I'll take it as ice cream. I do know this bit certainly is an ice cream. So.
Okay.
Against? And abstain. 15, to agree the appointment of internal auditors.
When you agree paper, to be clear, a question was asked of me. It is the third of the three kind of options is the company that I have a bit of paper. Macro Shade Business Consultants are the third option, the Somerset based. They gave a reasonable price and an original audit programme which they were working against. I'm not so sure it would work remotely from Surrey, in all honesty, and put together a service. And whilst the first bid was from a local government consultant, clearly it's a lot more money.
Any questions? So I propose that we agree the appointment of the internal auditors as laid out in the document. Yeah. Seconded by Charles, all those in favour? Against? Abstain. Number 16, to notify Blitz event and approve the council's support. Oh, sorry,
yeah, so just to explain to you what the term BioBlitz means is, so the Environment and Climate Change Board is planning this event, and the aim is for it to support the council's approach to reduce grass cutting for no. So the idea is that members of the public, supported by some local expert volunteers, will survey certain areas of the downs. They'll record the insects and the flowers and everything that are on those areas. They'll do that once on the 30th of April, so before No May, and they'll do that for some areas which are going to be mown and some areas which are not going to be mown. And then go back and do it again in the middle of June, so after No May, to see whether we can see any discernible difference in terms of areas that will continue to be mown through May and areas that won't. And the idea of this is to, I suppose, for us to understand a bit more about what the biodiversity is on some of these downs, and also when we're planning a land management policy where we're talking about how much grass we want to cut, that we understand what the impacts there might be on biodiversity on the downs. And it's a no cost thing really. We're going to use a program called iNaturalist, which is you can download it. It's a free download. We're going to borrow the gazebo and have our kind of branding around it, and then just get some people to come along, record what they see, write it in on iNaturalist, and then we'll be able to pick that data off and see what we see. And let's hope that we see a bit more biodiversity in the areas we don't mow than in the areas that we do, because otherwise it will be a bit strange.
Yes, exactly it, isn't it? No May seems to be quite popular, but it's quite nice to know what the effect of not mowing is.
Yes,
rather than just it got a bit longer. Paul?
The downs are a bit of a concern for me because I did go to other parts of Cornwall which are heavily used by visitors, the tracks where the visitors use usually have gravel put down because they've worn the grass away. And so on the grass, on the downs, it would be useful if they could change sometimes the mowing regime, because there are areas that they don't mow at all, which is great. But the areas that are mown regularly are getting worn to the bedrock. So eventually it'll be like West Cornwall, be gravel everywhere, which isn't good for anybody. Just bear that in mind with the downs. It just and elsewhere around the downs, going up to Compass Point, and it's getting a bit thin, the grass.
Yeah, I think we're aware of that it's fragile earth, as it were.
Yeah, it is.
We are looking at land management policies, so I think that's something to take on board as we kind of understand how that may or may not work. Yes, but yeah.
There is something. I've been doing research this week, and I've read a paper from the High Weald AONB, of all things, and it's about trampling, and actually pathways, designated pathways, are much better for biodiversity than allowing people to sort of spread, because you concentrate the load on one area, and actually you allow the other areas to thrive.
Gravel?
No, not necessarily saying gravel, but grass. So I think it would be. If we were to suggest we mow the whole thing and let everybody wander where they are, wander where they like, would be a grave mistake from a biodiversity point of view.
I'm all for this, but I think we have to be a little bit careful that we're not sort of making some false assumptions, because some of the downs are mown at the moment, some of the downs are not mown, and if we have the no-mow area, we want to make sure that we're counting in a bit that has previously been mown, then is not mown again, against a bit that's been mown all the time. Otherwise, if we're going to the bits that have never been mown, that's going to give us the wrong count. If we go to a bit that has previously been mown a lot, and then allowed to grow up a bit, and then cut down a bit later on, that's going to give us a much more accurate assumption of, a much more accurate picture of what the no-mow achieves.
Yeah, I think that's a really helpful observation, and I think if you'll be prepared to give us any sense of what you feel in terms of where we should mow and where we shouldn't mow, we're actually looking at the moment to try to identify what the no-mow areas will be, and we're in planning for the bioblitz, so any help you can give us or any advice in that respect is I'll be in touch.
No worries.
I think the proposal is printed in the notice, isn't it? Support. Yes. So can I propose that we note the bioblitz event and approve the council's report?
Second that? All those in favour? Is that all? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item number 17, to agree a letter of support for Bude-Stratton Life Saving Club's funding bid for Sport England.
Yeah, well, this is just a request that's come into the office, giving you the background detail of what their bid is. It's not to us, so it's not a council decision around our money. They're bidding to Sport England, and they're looking for the council as a guardian of the community, as it were, to show that it would want it would support that bid. But over to you.
Letter of support. Sounds quite easy.
Just to speed this up, can I propose that we send that letter?
Put your pen up.
Careful, councillor, please.
I don't know what she was saying to me. Just take my pen up. It's so rude. Anyway, that's my proposal. That way we do.
Second.
All those in favour? Okay, I think that's everybody who is no saying. Item 18, to agree the schedule of council meetings. We'll all have the schedule. See what follows the pattern.
It's the usual pattern, unless people have a request to change, so Thursdays and 6 o'clock being the main aim and of the 3 o'clock on Wednesdays for planning. First Thursday of the month ordinarily, though probably not in January, if I remember right.
No, because of the Christmas holiday, yeah. Sean?
Can I propose we do this?
Okay, all in favour? I know. We're going to do this. I know you said half past 8 before we do the final bit. Excellent, okay, so number 19, to approve movements of the council's reserves.
This one is more of a housekeeping one. I'm not suggesting any major changes to things at this stage. So really it's catching up with bringing up to date with things which you've put into reserves in the past, which you have now started spending. The process of that is then obviously you're reducing the reserve because you've spent it, and it flies off into the budget. So it's a housekeeping thing on this occasion. At year end, so probably in May's meeting probably, we will look at the reserves in a more holistic way as to exactly what projects mean and what we want to reallocate within that. But this one also at this point is just an update. But also I felt it would be useful to have it in front of you at this meeting because you've made some other big decisions around projects and such. So to have that to hand, it kind of made some sense.
Any questions? No? I'd like to approve. Sorry, you have your pen up, Sean. Go.
Can I propose we do this, please?
All those in favour?
We've just read it all
That's
before.
everyone.
It's fine, it's fine.
Is that everyone? Sorry. Anyone against? Abstentions? No. Item 20, financial report to approve the schedule of payments made between the 17th of February and the 2nd of March 2023. Accept them. Second that. All those in favour? And against? And abstain. And then schedule of payments to be made on the 3rd of March 2023. I propose that we accept them. And all those in favour? Against? Abstain. Good. Okay, item 21. So, Public Bodies Efficient Meetings Act 1960. To consider passing the following resolution. In relation to the remaining items on the agenda, publicity will be prejudicial to the public interest by reason of the confidential nature of the business to be transacted, and the press and public are instructed to withdraw. The following items are confidential and the meeting will proceed in closed session. I'd like to propose that we pass that resolution.
Second that.
All those in favour? Against?
Sorry, it's a pen.
And abstain. Resolution to propose. Thank you.
At the last meeting, they was on about trees, people keeping an eye on trees.
That was in Oakside. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, who do you ring up if somebody's hacking down trees and you don't think they should be doing it?
The person doing it.
Yeah, that's not bloody good. He knows he's doing it. I know he's doing it. Who do you tell if he's doing? Who do you report them to if they're hacking down trees and they shouldn't be doing so?
Yeah. I mean, you can come to the town council and we can try and find out whether if there's a planning issue.
Yeah, but the time ain't being funny. But the time you look get all organised, there'll be bloody things will be done. I mean, if you walk along and somebody's, you need to pick a phone up there and then and report it like.
The Forestry Commission.
Forestry Commission.
Yeah, would be your quickest bet. They might actually be able to get somebody out
Yeah,
to stop it happening.
Perhaps it wasn't such a good idea after all, was it?
Matter of curiosity, where is it?
It's up right at the moment.
Yeah, I sorry, through the chair. Obviously, I've spotted that myself, and I was going to mention it to Sean as head of the planning committee. If you're on about the 3 big houses they built where mate's just hoed through the trees.
We're Tim.
Up where you live, Darky.
That's done nothing. It's where they want to build those 3 houses.
Yeah.
Well, the other week, the council blokes was up there. And this bloke was on about they were going to chop the rest of those trees down because they're all dead. But they don't know who owns the edge. Which
Can I just say, if you'd like to go in and see Tracy in the office and we'll make a report.
Well, they haven't done nothing. The point I'm trying to make is, if they go in there and start hacking things down, not the council, the people who want to build, and they start taking those pines or anything down, who do you report it to? That's supposed to be questioned. I mean, by the time I need to be able,
See Tracy.
yeah, I need to be able to pick a phone up, don't I, and say what's going on. It's no good me.
Well,
If
we're
you can't
Tracy.
see me, I'll give you the phone number.
Oh right, I'll come and see you. Right. Yeah, that was quite simple in the end, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're ready to close session. Thank you.